Okay, so for today, I'm going to introduce you on the circle theorem rules. But before we begin with the circle theorem rules, let's understand how do we label the parts of the circle first, okay? Because we are going to use a lot of those terminologies when we want to explain our rules involving circle theorem. Now, first, we are going to look at this line here. So if I have the center of the circle, which is usually represented by the letter O, and if I were to draw a straight line across the center of the circle, we call that a diameter, okay? So this one is a diameter, okay? So the next line is, if I were to have another line which is originate from the center and it extend until the circumference, like this, I will represent it with a dotted line. We will call that line a radius. So radius is basically a half of a diameter. Alright? And of course, this line over here, which is represented by the black marker pen, the whole thing over here, it's called a circumference. Okay. Alright, a circumference. Okay. Now, I'm going to draw another line on this diagram here, which it looks like a diameter. Okay. It is still a straight line, but it does not cross the diameter. Okay. So it will look something like this. Alright, it will look something like this. Now, it does not have to be parallel with the diameter. I am just showing you in comparison to the diameter. It can be from here to here or here to here, as long it doesn't touch. It doesn't cross the middle or the center. So for this line, we call this a chord. Alright, we call this a chord. Alright, we call this a chord. Okay, so that is the one part of a circle. And the next part, I'm going to show you more things over here. Alright, so I will label the center. And let's just say if I have two radius, so it's going to look something like this. Okay, so this part which I'm shading right now, it's called a sector. But if you notice, I have two sectors, a smaller sector and also a bigger sector also. Alright? So how I would like to remember sector is like a slice of pizza over here, right? So this part, I will call this the minor sector. This part will be the minor sector. Whereas this big part, it will be called the major sector. Okay, the major sector. Right, same thing over here. Instead of having two radius, I can draw a straight line, right, which is a chord. All right, I can draw a chord. So you will notice over here, there's an area. We call this area a segment. So same thing, I have a smaller segment, I have a bigger segment over here. So we will call this a minor segment. Okay, and for the bigger one, we will call this a major segment. All right. And finally, of course, for this part over here, if I were to draw my radius again from the center, I would like to name this part over here. Alright? Like for the whole thing, we call it as a circumference. But if I'm interested to refer to this small part of the circumference, we call this an arc, ARC. But again, you will notice there is a smaller arc and there's a big arc over here. So we will call this the minor arc. And for the big one, which is refer to this one, okay, we will call this the major arc over here. All right. Now it's important to know these parts over here because when we are doing lessons on circle theorem, you'll be listening to all these parts very frequently. Okay. So do get used to know on all these parts in the circle, and that will help you a lot when you are learning your rule on circle theorems.